Alright, let's get this out of the way now. I don't like this game. I don't care to play this game. And while there are aspects of the game I do readily enjoy, the game itself is not something that I like. No, I did not play the original NES version. Yes, I played the Wii U version. I was not about to get warped back to the start of the game every single time I died. The only times I allowed that were with level ups and after I made some progress at the very least. Yeah, I use save states in the game a lot, in dungeons and especially at boss fights, just to ease up with the amount of time that I had to spend here. I played the Wii U version for the record. Overall though, while not enjoying my time, I can say that it isn't because the game had a genre switch. Yeah, this game really isn't a top-down adventure game anymore. No, that's now a side-scrolling action-adventure game, removing almost all the puzzle elements and focusing more on combat overall. Hell, the top-down sections are only when Link travels the overworld now, and while you'll see enemies here, touching one sends you to a side-scrolling section. This feels more like an action RPG, and, well, yeah, that's actually the best way to sum up the change. An action RPG with level grinding, but somehow this is Zelda. Maybe this should have been a spin-off rather than a true sequel? Just saying? Not sure. Either way, this game was vastly different than the original Legend of Zelda. I get why this happened, though. Back before the NES was a thing, gaming was just so simple that sequels were never really all that common. And Nintendo didn't really know how to handle this. After all, the original sequel to Super Mario Bros. Was just a harder take on Super Mario Bros., which the Zelda developers probably thought was dumb. That's why they went overkill in the opposite direction and made this game so vastly different and it barely feels like a Zelda game at all. But to be fair, there are some firsts here that translate to other Zelda games. Villages with actual people are here, spells are here. Yeah, you actually have a magic gauge for one, that's interesting. And Link's moves from Smash Bros. Are taught to Link in this game. Overall, it's indeed an important game to the timeline, and I respect it for that. But that doesn't change the idea that this game is one of the most difficult NES games of all time. Before I start ranting on that one, though, let's get this review started up. Let's do it. Let's take on Shadow Link! You know the text scroll that explains the story? This is great! Zelda's been put under a sleeping spell and Link needs the rest of the Triforce, more or less the Triforce of Courage, to save her. You have 6 crystals, you need to put them in 6 temples and then collect the Triforce piece in the last temple. Simple, right? I actually like this version of the story. However, if you look into things and find the real story, you know, digging for more context, perhaps, this actually made the story kinda worse. First off, this game takes place 6 years after the original Legend of Zelda. This Link is the same one from the original game, and he's now 16. This means he was 10 during the original game, huh? That makes Ocarina of Time a little confusing, doesn't it? Anyway, Link wakes up in a strange mark on his hand that looks like the Triforce, but with a 3rd piece. Talking to Impa, the wise woman, she explains that there's a second Princess Zelda, and that this particular Zelda is in a coma thanks to her brother. Here we go, folks. Her brother attacked her wanting the secrets to the Triforce alongside an evil wizard. And the evil wizard got mad and actually attacked Zelda with a spell. The wizard got Zelda into a coma, but I guess there was a backlash effect and the wizard died. Zelda's brother felt guilty and deemed every princess would be named Zelda going forward. Meanwhile, Link is here to help the older Zelda and reunite the entire Triforce. But to do so, he has to solve the former king's puzzle. Link is given a letter from the king from long ago, but only the future king of Hyrule can read it, which is ironic since the king's son couldn't, I guess. He still is, you know, became the king of Hyrule some 100 years back, even after nearly killing his sister. I suppose the first Zelda, apparently. Yeah, it isn't very clear, but oh well. Despite actual kings of Hyrule not being able to read this letter, I suppose, Link sure as hell can, and basically heads out to bring about an era with 2 Princess Zeldas. This story is all sorts of wacky. Seriously, I think the NES text crawl is far better and far more simple compared to the actual story, so ouch. Luckily, this game looks great. The enemies and even Link looks fantastic. The villagers look good, the backdrops and temples look fantastic. Yeah, I love the way this game looks. Link's sprite is pretty detailed overall, and the only real issue is how small his sword is, which kind of affects the gameplay as well. Still, I like Link's look here. I also like how the baddies look in the game. They're very well designed sprites, especially for 8-bit, and the boss fights look pretty great too. They don't animate well though, not as well as Link anyway, but overall, the look of the game is fantastic. The music is pretty damn good too. Hit sound effects and music are all pretty top notch here. While I like many of the tracks, the best one is the dungeon track. I have more nostalgia to the Melee version, I'm not gonna lie. That's where I first heard it. Didn't get to try this game until after I already had a GameCube. Still, I can appreciate how well this game looks on the NES, and compared to the original Legend of Zelda, I feel that's a testament to the way this game actually looks, and, moves, and fluid animation. Back to the music, the opening theme is actually really good. The overworld is a remix, but it's different enough to stand out, and being in towns is chipper and joyous due to being a bit more safe. The battle music is built to pump you up for the fights, and it works really well. And as stated before, the dungeon theme is really damn good. The boss theme is pretty good too. Yeah, I love the music of this game, as well as the sprite quality. Easily my favorite part about this game, and it's arguably the best part about this game, except there is a pretty staunch contender. So, this Link is pretty versatile, not counting his weapons and items. In fact, let's start there. Almost every item Link finds in the dungeon helps him only in the overworld. I think the candle which lights dark caves on the side-scrolling aspect and the key that opens all doors are the only ones that aren't overworld exclusive. All the other items are overworld items, like this raft for example, for this one particular section, or the boots that lets you walk on water in this other particular section. Maybe the flute that removes this one monster? Yay? No, Link uses more dynamic sword skills as well as straight up spells that are his main source of travel and attacking when he's in his 2D sections. For the first time ever in the series, we have a magic meter and spells. This is the first for the series, and there's plenty of spells to go along with this. You can cast Shield to add to your defense, or Jump to increase your jumping abilities. Try Fireball for some long-range hitting attacks that are needed to kill very specific enemies. This last one's only an American version exclusive, though. I suppose they felt the spell wasn't as useful as some of the others. It's true, the enemies I'd like to use this on are immune to the damn thing, so yeah, they made some enemies only hittable with this fire spell? I don't get it. Anyway, you have a healing and a screen nuke eventually too, and while magic costs are high on those last two spells, they're still useful attacks if you can manage them. You can only use a spell once in a room, so you need to transition to the screen to get spells like Shield and Fairy, Fairy being a spell that turns Link into a really small fairy, to actually stop. Eventually, Link learns the downward and upward thrust, moves that people mostly know from Smash Brothers that started in this game. The upward thrust wasn't as useful, but the downward thrust is amazing. With this, you can bounce on foes and either kill them or sometimes skip the harder to defeat ones. This is an awesome move for Link to have, and I appreciate it far more in Smash Brothers now for sure. Either way, I love the gameplay here, excluding one simple thing. The level up system. Yeah, there are RPG mechanics in the game. You kill enough shit and you level up. Seems simple. Well, sadly, there are also lives here. If you lose all your lives, you game over. You keep whatever level you gained, but you lose all your experience, which could be a massive amount, given how much you may actually need. The first few levels are okay, but the last ones take a buttload of experience. This can be a bit crushing if you burn through all 3 of your lives after all of that level grinding and didn't quite achieve the level that you were looking for. Oops. And yes, with level design like this, you will most likely burn through all 3 lives before you can really consider how many points you have left to level up. Now let's talk about dying for a minute. You will die a lot in this game. Check this out. The weakest version of this enemy is a beast when you first encounter him. You are supposed to play some weird version of Happy Slaps. He can swing his sword from top or bottom. He can also move his shield up or down. However, the shield and the sword don't move in unison, but yours sure as hell do. If you duck, your top is exposed. If you stand, your bottom is exposed. You can only attack and guard at the same spot, meaning that playing things slow and safe is incredibly difficult. You are bound to be hit, and these things hit hard. The only way to really defeat this thing effectively is a jump slash, which to be fair is so effective that it becomes Link's strongest attack later on. However, here it feels more like an honest exploit. You know, like it works, but it wasn't really intended to work that well. After all, there are some places where the hallway is just too damn small to use this attack anyway. Then you actually have to happy slap this piece of crap. I find getting aggressive is the best option. Sure, you take hits, but I take a lot less than when I'm trying to play it safe, so I guess it works. Still, taking hits in this game isn't a good thing, and this enemy shows up in the first dungeon several times. Oops. Naturally, they only grow in strength, and one even has throwing knives, which is fantastic. These aren't even the worst enemies half the time, which is just great. These levels are brutal. Hell, the entire game is brutal. But so what? Yeah, things hit hard, but that isn't the worst thing. You can just heal up, right? The healing spell takes a lot of juice. Normally, you can only do this once, maybe twice on a full magic bar, which is fine, but it isn't a full heal either. Either way, there are times I feel you cannot avoid taking damage, and with the low amount of heals you have, this can be difficult to manage overall. What? Oh, refilling your magic and health with items? Okay, the only health item in the game is a fairy, which is basically so rare they aren't very reliable. As for refilling magic, if you're lucky, there are indeed times you can find blue potions to reveal such a small amount of magic it's near laughable. Red potions can be found by killing powerful enemies, but it's still incredibly rare to have it drop. And it doesn't drop enough to be reliable, so more like a nice bonus when you find one. You may be able to find a red potion in certain areas, but even this is hit and miss at times. This makes things tricky when you have only 3 lives. Last but certainly not least, making this annoying is knockback. Not only are there incredibly strong enemies in the first few dungeons, but eventually knockback becomes an issue. See, at first there aren't too many areas where knockback becomes a problem, but more and more there are lava-filled pits everywhere. Fall into a pit and you die immediately. There are a few times when enemies I couldn't see until after already making the jump basically killed me in one shot. Fun? Of course not. This can be capped by careful timing and slowly moving forward, but it still hits hard when all of your momentum is stopped by a hit that you didn't see coming and instant death. Nothing in these stages set them apart from this either. They just become more and more brutal as time goes on. Boss fights, however, are a bit of a different story. These are still hard, but they're more straightforward in the way that you tackle them. No, there are still some I swear you can't avoid taking damage from, but it's one fight. If you have a life to spare, the boss fight isn't too bad. You simply lose 1 life, let that heal and shield you up, and basically, as long as you play remotely well, the boss will fall. I call bullshit on the last boss, however. If you don't have a spare life when you reach him, easy to do mind you, you may not be able to beat him at all. You have to use the Screen Nuke Thunder spell to even begin damaging him, the spell that takes up a ton of magic. I couldn't even heal after using this spell. I thought Shield Spell would help and maybe Jump Spell, as I could use them at least after I used the Screen Nuke, but it was actually Reflect that won the day. Then Dark Link is the hardest version of Happy Slaps unless you manipulate the AI. Yeah, a boss fight right after another boss fight. Fun! No, not really. Overall though, I don't mind the boss fights. It's the levels themselves that have the same enemies over and over again, but stronger and stronger. Also, traps you're dealing with repeat, yeah. There are a couple of times that the levels are just similar rooms to other dungeons, or even the same dungeon, hell. And it's the same enemies, but possibly stronger or more annoying to deal with. Yeah, repeating rooms, isn't that fun? To even stand a chance, you may want to break out the guide and find all the hidden goodies that dot Hyrule. Some of these are tough to find. There are points on the overworld that look no different than any other plot of land, but if you stand on them, you can get a heart container or magic container. These refill and increase your health and magic. They are overall useful to keep you alive, but finding them all isn't the most intuitive. Some of them are found in simple to notice caves, along with things that you may need to collect just for getting spells. Yeah, collecting spells while needed to finish the game oftentimes feels like it's a side quest more than anything else. Though some of these spells are optional in the Japanese release, just saying. Either way, things in the overworld can be difficult to pinpoint without a map, and extra lives are about in the same situation. Oh yeah, there are extra lives in the game. You can find them in sparse numbers in the game and possibly in a dungeon or two. Here's the catch though. When you pick up an extra life, that life is gone. No matter how many times you save, reset, or die, it will not come back. Now, if you know where they are, you can save most of them until the final stretch of the game, which is a fine strategy, but how would you know to do that on your first run? Overall, I think Zelda 2 is a drag to play. I respect its history and impact on the series, but the game itself isn't enjoyable to me. I can't stand this game, but the game does do a decent amount right where I might be able to recommend it to those looking for something like a hardcore challenge. After all, the game isn't unplayable or even unbeatable, it's just a bit of a slog to do so. However, the writing and the way secrets are handled leaves a lot to be desired. Secrets are useful, but few and far between. And while the writing is just utterly bizarre, making this game a sequel, but also ignoring the first game really hard, then the utter bullshit of super hard enemies, knockback, and limited lives and leveling up makes each dungeon a test of patience over skill. However, I still say the gameplay is well designed, and using spells is super fun. The game is charming with sound and quality and music. There are things that I like here. I think the game ends up not as bad, but not great either. It ends up being okay overall. A solid 6 out of 10. I say try it out if you have the time and access to it, but yeah, I wouldn't seek it out either, per se. Again, it's the low point of the Legend of Zelda series for me. But that's all the time I'm spending on this game. Like I said, I didn't really like the game, so I'm glad I finally beat it and put it behind me. If you liked the video, likes, comments, subscriptions, bell icon pushes, these all really help my channel out. Until next time, my minions, take care!